at one time or another in their career, were involved in prosecuting the war on drugs, and have now come to the conclusion that it doesn't work, it's a waste of time, and we need to radically change our policies towards drugs. And one thing that's a little bit different about LEAP from a lot of organizations is we don't focus only on marijuana. I mean, don't get me wrong, we should absolutely legalize marijuana tomorrow, but that's not going to solve the whole problem, because we're still going to have a $400 billion a year industry in the form of methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, and other illegal drugs in the hands of criminal organizations. So we work on advocating for legalization of all drugs. We think that a regulated legal market where addicts are in the medical system and not in the criminal justice system is really the way to go. Both it's more humane for individual users, takes the profit out of it, gets it out of the hands of criminals, makes it a lot harder for kids to buy, increases safety because there'd be some regulatory oversight of how drugs are made. So just something to keep in mind as we're out celebrating 420. Yeah, the issue is marijuana today, but it's really bigger than marijuana as well. So that's what LEAP does. Our website is copsaylegalizedrugs.com, so I would invite everybody to check it out if you get the chance. So I came to LEAP. I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration for 13 years. That was a few years in Miami, a few years in Guatemala, the National Drug Intelligence Center, a couple years, really my final 2 years in Mexico, in northeastern Mexico. And it was really during my time in Mexico that I saw just how disastrous our drug policy is. We see what was a beautiful, thriving, vibrant city, kind of the economic engine of Mexico in Monterrey in northeastern Mexico, that was just demolished. I mean, really in the course of my 2 years there, it went from one of the safest places to live in Latin America to the center of a drug war between cartels. And it was tragic. Ultimately, my family was evacuated because of the security situation there. And it was really sad to see kind of what happened to that city, and of course what happened to the people, because they were living in a war zone. And because of the corrupting influence of the drug trade and of cartels, which of course has its roots in our prohibition policies, right? There was no effective police force. There was no effective judicial infrastructure. So people were living there with a horrible situation, horrible violence, but at the same time afraid to go to the police if they were victims of crimes, because the cops were almost all on the payroll of the cartels. And that's something that we do. And then of course, you know, because we have we've decided on prohibition as our strategy, and we're going to be so law enforcement centric in how we approach the drug problem, we have the entire industry in the hands of criminal organizations. Well, you know, we saw what happened with prohibition, right? For 13 years, alcohol was illegal, and what happened? We bred Al Capone and his minions and lots of other criminal organizations, and we're doing the exact same thing with the drug trade. So, you know, instead of disputes between competitors in the drug industry going to court to settle their disputes, they settle it out with gunfire. So the violence in Mexico really spiraled while I was there. It was tragic to see. And in my last year in Mexico, the official number was that there were about 13,000 people that were killed. Well, you know, to put that in perspective, and obviously it's been an awful week for America, and it's been an awful few months for America, right? What happened in Newtown, what happened in Boston, well, you know, that's the equivalent of about 10 Boston bombings happening every day in Mexico. It's the equivalent of about a Newtown massacre and a half happening every day in Mexico. And yet America's response to it, right, is, well, that's too bad for Mexico. You're just going to have to suck it, and you're going to have to go along with our prohibition policies. And I think that's wrong. I mean, it's certainly wrong to put marijuana users in jail, but it's also wrong to import drugs and export violence and guns the way we're doing. So that, you know, that's something to think about. It's bigger than individual initiatives. It's bigger than state initiatives. It's really a national policy.